Excellent. Okay, that's working. Have you ever had an experience where you started recording something or set something up and then forgot about it, right? And then just to later on realize that the battery ran out or the memory ran out.
Yeah, totally. I know that one.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Like especially when like people are counting on it.
Yeah, remember that happening during when we were trying to, because we did the show about Apollo 13, and we started chatting to some of the original mission controllers.
Yeah.
And we ended up going over to Texas and like interviewing them and going into mission control with them, and they were like showing us all around. And my GoPro battery ran out like halfway through, and it's like, whoa.
Wait, you got to interview actual space people?
Yeah, like the actual mission controllers.
What?
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. Inside mission control room.
Yeah, how'd you set that up?
Just met. So when we first did Apollo, we got this message from this guy called, oh God, what was his name? I'm trying to remember his name. It's gone at the moment anyway, and we're like, hang on, that name's familiar. Like, who is that? And Cy Liebergott, the guy's name. And like, that's a familiar name. Like, what's going on here? So we Googled him, and he was Ecom, which is one of the main roles in mission control during the Apollo program. And we were like, okay, so obviously he's got like a Google alert on tracking anything to do with Apollo 13 and just gets pinged whenever something came up, and our show came up. So he contacted us, and we stayed in contact with him, and then he put us onto this guy called Jerry Bostick, who was FIDO, which is another position in mission control, and we became kind of even closer to him. And so when we went over to the States, he came along to our show, and then we went back, and him and this guy John Aaron, who is like kind of one of the more famous mission controllers, we met them in Texas and had like barbecue and stuff, and then they took us into mission control, and we like interviewed them in there, and they told us what was happening, and like, yeah, it was quite amazing.
That's insane. So you didn't even reach out to these people, they somehow found what you
found us.
Yeah. Man, that's like some law of attraction stuff going on there.
Totally. Yeah, totally. It was, and it's quite amazing, like they almost didn't even remember what they'd done, because they were like, everything was so mechanical back then, and like using slide rules and calculating and stuff. They're like, it's all stuff that would be super simple to do on a computer now, but they were like sitting like at these consoles with these like numbers coming through, and they're like, couldn't even really tell you what's on the screen anymore. They're like, we don't even know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but they were using you and the Apollo project as one of the examples of what you might be able to do after a design degree at Victoria University, years after you're gone. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, and I always wondered who this guy was, and it was crazy to run into like years and years later in the studio.
It was such a, I think that's kind of, I'm quite happy about that, because it's kind of like, when I first started doing it, I was like, oh my God, why did I do this industrial design degree? Like, I'm doing something that's not even industrial design. But then when you kind of step back, you're like, this is totally industrial design. Like, this is, and those skill set is so, any design skill set is so transferable that, so it's kind of like, it totally is. It's a valid thing to do. I mean, it's not necessarily a money-making thing to do, but I'm sure going to work for Porsche would probably make you a lot more money, but hey, you know.
And do you still describe yourself when you introduce yourself to others as industrial designer, or what do you tell people that?
I just say I'm a designer now. Like, because I've done product stuff, I've done spatial stuff, I'm now doing kind of software stuff and interface, and it's all within the same world. So it's just design.
Yeah, I mean, I found comfort behind the designer title for the same reason. It's like, it's both vague enough for you to be able to move a lot in between, and also accepted enough, like, for it to be, you know, oh, okay, he's a designer.
Yeah.
But most of the time, they're like, oh, then what do you design?
Yeah.
That's always the question they ask after.
Yeah.
What do you say to that one?
At the moment, software, because that keeps me the most busy, but it's kind of like I always have that caveat of like, because it's good, like I've got the kind of side project, the Together project, which I'm doing, which is kind of like my passion project that I can kind of keep going and know that, oh, if I ever get bored of this, I can kind of stop and kind of carry on with that, or just kill some time and go, oh, I just need to switch over to something different now. But at the moment, yeah, I'd say software design, because it's kind of what I'm doing, and it's pretty interesting.
And just for some context, do you want to say a little something about the Together project, or is that completely?
No, that's so it's a concept of that I came up with seeing my daughter watching the Magic School Bus, and I've been working on this idea of taking sort of interactive theatre that we've been doing with Apollo and kind of making it a little bit bigger and a bit more technologically advanced. I was exploring Ender's Game as a concept around, you know, this sort of idea of multiple people working together as a team within a space, and that led me to the concept of geodesic domes and projecting the space within a geodesic dome. The Ender's Game concept was quite big, and so we're like, okay, we need to kind of pull this back. What would be a prototype? And that's when I saw my daughter watching the Magic School Bus, and I was like, okay, this is really interesting, because the whole idea of the Magic School Bus is like, it's these kids inside a bus that can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the cool thing about the dome, is that you've got people inside the dome and you can kind of take them anywhere. And that kind of, we applied for funding, got some funding from Screenwrites Australia to kind of explore how you can use visual media and video media as a way to educate kids who don't have access to stuff like that. And so, you know, the initial plan was to buy a dome, and the domes were really expensive, so we're like, okay, we're going to find a dome, do a kind of test version of the season inside that dome, and then get investment to buy our own dome and tour around. And so we started working with Stardome, and then obviously the pandemic hit, and so it's like, okay, Stardome's closed. The idea of like bringing kids together to kind of like collaborate on stuff probably isn't totally kosher at the moment. So then we pivoted again and went, okay, well, what if we take the concept, build the dome within a VR experience, so it's the same as being there live except virtual. Then we can kind of prototype it, work out what the projection is, how the interface works, present it to sponsors, get more money to go back into Stardome when we can, and then hopefully get more money from that to buy our own dome to tour. So it's kind of these two extra steps have been added along the way, but I find the VR thing really interesting at the moment, because I think while it's missing the kind of key element that is live theatre, which is live and having a human there, using it as a kind of way to prototype, I think is going to be a really fascinating, whether it works or not, I don't know, but I think just being able to see the space, interact with it, and because the interaction is such a key part of, you know, the interactive theatre, being able to prototype that interaction is, I think, will probably be really valuable. So, yeah, we've kind of built up a little team, and we're going to attack that over the next few months and see what comes of it.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So.
I gave a talk on prototyping the other day, and a part of it was I used the SpaceX thing as a case study, and ultimately their mission is for humans to be an interplanetary species, and they're kind of working towards an MVP of having a colony on Mars, right? And then that's the ultimate vision, but then if you look at everything that SpaceX has done, they're not going to go straight there. They've kind of staged it into, okay, what are the prerequisite things that needs to happen if that was to happen, and that's why they're doing the things, they're going about it in the way that they have. And I think like designers are really good at, like how you've not just reacted to the COVID thing, but responded to it in a way that keeps you're still on the same mission, and you're still able to take steps towards it with prototypes.
Yeah, that's totally the thing. It's like that. There's also kind of so little funding for these kind of exploratory projects that when you get some, you've kind of got to go, okay, this thing's come up. How do I kind of pivot to make sure that I'm not just wasting this money or appear to be wasting this money? And like as someone who's kind of received a reasonable amount of funding from like Creative New Zealand and other funders, you always have this kind of worry in the back of your mind, like, I don't want to appear like I'm taking this for granted. I want to make sure I deliver something, enough to keep going. While on the other hand, knowing that the amount of funding you get is not nearly enough to survive. So you kind of always have to have other stuff that you're doing in order to do the things that you want to do. Like there's kind of the odd designer who kind of gets to the point where they kind of get to do, like I think, is it Stefan Sagmeister?
Stefan Sagmeister, yeah.
And he takes like every 4th year, he takes off.
Yeah,
and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he works 3 years in his studio and then just spends a year in like Thailand or Bali or something, and he uses that to kind of reset his brain and get excited about doing design again. And it's like, wow, that would be an amazing position to get to. But it's one of those kind of aspirational. It's not as aspirational as an acting career where, actors are like, you're either up here or you're somewhere down here. Like design's a bit more, there's a bit more of a gradient, but there's certainly those few who kind of get to the top and you're like, it'd be so awesome to be you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of problems with that picture, because I've been reading this book, Sapiens.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that the way that we're kind of biologically designed, our hardware is optimized for a kind of a lifestyle that is very much seasonal. You're not doing the same thing all year round.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
You have to be good at multiple things. In fact, they think, I'm reading a chapter about how humans used to move around, with the seasons, until agriculture happened and it became more beneficial to just stay in one place and do all this kind of stuff. And so if you look at the modern career, it's like, okay, you figure out what you want to do when you're 18, and then you do that for 40 years.
Yeah.
And then you just keep doing it, and there's no seasons. It's like you're, and that idea of Stefan Sagmeister going like, saying once every 4 years, he's gonna, like, it's a season for him to not express, but to take in.
I think that kind of idea of seasonality is kind of what appeals to me about design, like project-based work where you're always changing what you're doing, and sometimes quite fundamentally. Like, one of our projects at the moment is to do with, optimizing construction processes, Another one is looking at how do you sell tickets to a theatre, and then the other one is obviously kind of dome-based infotainment, if you like. And I think that kind of being able to jump between those it's definitely something that I kind of personally need. And I think if I was offered a job, that paid me a bunch of money, but was going to be the same thing every day, I just don't think I would. I'd probably take it to start with, and I just don't think I'd last. I just kind of personally need that kind of variety to make sure that I'm sort of keeping myself occupied.
I'm the same. Like I can't remember who the quote is by, but I remember some famous quote person saying, "I can't imagine nothing more terrifying than getting paid a lot of money to do something that I don't like for a long period of time."
Yeah, it would just be, it'd be grim. And
it's Tom Sachs, that's who he is.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He's like, can you imagine getting paid a lot of money?
That's definitely someone who just does what he wants to do.
Yeah.
That's it. He's probably another one like Sagmeister who he just kind of gets to pick and choose. And yeah.
So I guess when you started off, did you always imagine that you'd do like space related theater while working on startups? Like, how has your career turned out in a way that you didn't expect to? In a way,
I always thought I would work in a studio, like. I got, when I was just after I graduated, Simon Fraser hooked me up with an interview at IDEO in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
And so I went in there and I just kind of suddenly realized this would be really cool, but I am like super out of my depth. The one thing that I wish I had spent more time on at design school was kind of refining my sketching.
Right.
And like that is, I think if you're going to be an industrial designer, that's like a foregone, like you have to be able to sketch. Like, and it is way easier to get work if you've got a good sketchbook, basically. And so from there, I was like, okay, I'm potentially not the right kind of candidate for those kind of jobs. Like looking at their stuff and seeing like I remember one of them was like a container for carrying hearts for heart transplant patients, and like these these beautiful sketches, and I was like, I actually don't know if that is the kind of doing the form of the object is the bit that I enjoy the most. Like I enjoy the kind of concept that comes before that, but getting into one of those studios as a graduate, you definitely have to come through from the bottom, and you're probably going to be the one banging out the iterative sketches.
Oh wow, yeah.
To get to that next level. So it's probably a bit different now. Like I probably have more of a chance now in getting in somewhere like that. But from there I was like, okay, I think I need to kind of do my own thing. Not that I was thinking that after the meeting. After the meeting I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? But after kind of, this was during a road trip that I was on in the States, and this is where we came up with the idea for Apollo towards the end of that road trip. And I think kind of just being on that, not having finished university and having nothing planned after that, like zero, it was kind of a good chance to kind of switch my brain off for a little while. And then I guess it's kind of like similar to what Sagmeister does, is that the idea came because I wasn't thinking about anything else. So yeah, in that sense, my career is totally different to what I expected it to be. But then from then to now is totally different as well. So, and then and there's been a bunch of different things in between. So yeah, again, I think it's that kind of keeping things moving and changing is really useful. Having kids definitely made me, there was a period there where I really had to go, hang on, I need to actually be making money because I need to feed these human beings who rely on me. So there was like a period there where I had to kind of stop and go, okay, I can't just do these like little arts projects and think that I can survive.
Yeah.
But even that kind of, I went and worked with my dad's company. He makes prefabricated panels for construction. And so I was learning about prefabrication and construction and like architectural drawings and how to read them, and then that has become really useful for what I'm doing at the moment in software and understanding like construction processes for large scale construction and infrastructure projects. So everything you learn along the way is useful in some way. Like nothing's kind of wasted when you're learning. So yeah, it's different to what I planned, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at. I mean, I'm sure I'd be equally as happy if I had got into IDEO and was now like a design director there. Like, although I'd be stuck in San Francisco during a pandemic, which doesn't sound that great. But yeah, I just kind of there's always different things to kind of different ways to look at what you're doing.
So having gone through all of that, what if you could give one advice to someone who might be just starting out design school, right? Thinking they're gonna be, one of those designers, or might not have that strong of an idea on what to do. What would you say to him or her?
I'd definitely say keep sketching, because that's really useful. And I'd say when I came out, I was thinking I was an industrial designer in New Zealand. There's only, you can only work for Fisher and Paykel.
Yeah.
And that's not true. It's potentially true in one way, in that, being a industrial designer, there are very few jobs in New Zealand, but using the skills that you learn doing industrial design, there are lots of different things. Like, it's applicable to a lot of different things. So, now that I've sort of started looking at getting into UX and UI design, particularly the UX side, and I was reading up, I just started this with no experience, and reading up on it more and more, a lot of people are saying that it's quite easy for people to transition from industrial design to UX design, because you're still thinking about a user and how they use something and what the process is, and how do you make it really simple and comfortable for them in a virtual versus physical way. So, but the main thing that I kind of learned from design school was just kind of get stuck in as hard as you can, because there's so much to learn, and having that access to people who have the experience in the industry and are just going to sit there and talk you through it and help you is so valuable in the long run. And I did tutoring afterwards, and it's terrible, it shouldn't be like this, but I definitely engaged way more with the students who were engaged. Like, the ones who weren't engaging, I wouldn't give them, and I'm sure a better teacher probably would, but you just get energy from people who are giving you energy. And so if you want to get like the best out of the tutors, because they are probably like the best resource that you have at design school, you got to make sure you do the work. So
100%. I really enjoy so one of the messages that I'm kind of hearing is like, almost don't let what you've done before be like a limiter for you when you access kind of future options. Like that speaks to me quite a lot. And I see a lot of people who's like, oh yeah, I'm not that. I have no experience in that. But I'm like, dude, you were a lawyer. You know, you're so good at communication and writing.
Yeah.
That's like 80% transferable to doing this. You know, that kind of thing. And also, I really relate to that. There's that weird moment towards the end of university. You're not quite in the real world, but you're kind of starting to think about it, where you just have this space for, actually, I can do whatever I want right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
totally. Yeah. You're young and you got the whole world in front of you, and there's like, the world's your oyster, but you're also kind of like, I don't know anyone, I don't know anything. It's it's the hump to get over, but you just got to kind of keep grinding into it, really. And it doesn't need to be. What I kind of found with university was that when I realized I was doing the right thing was when I realized that I was enjoying doing the work. Like, it didn't feel like doing all-nighters, although they suck and you don't want to do them. It wasn't the end of the world. Like, it was like, I'm just going to do this to get it in because I think this is going to work. Like, this is a good idea. Should have started this like 3 weeks ago, but everyone does exactly the same thing. No matter how many times you tell yourself that you're not going to. It's just human beings, I reckon.
It actually links to another question that I had for you earlier, which was like, you seem to have picked up a lot of different skills and worked in a lot of different industries in your career, and but I imagine that would also open you up to a lot of people asking you to do different kinds of things and work on different kinds of projects. And even at like a much earlier stage in my career, like, you can't do all of those projects. You just get spread out too thin, and you develop no specialties, and you end up, How do you choose to work on projects that you want to work on, if that makes sense? How do you choose the ones that you want to work on? And how do you choose the ones that you say no to? I guess it's the same question.
Depends how much work I've got on, I guess. If I don't have any work on, then I just say yes to anything. But I think just through experience, you kind of learn where your skills lie. Like, I've done stuff like built websites, and I know I can build a website. Like, that's not an issue. I'm just not that good at it. Like, that's not really what. And so I kind of know that, okay, now that I've done that, I now know that's something that you'd be way better spending that money on someone else. You'll get maybe you'll get the same result. They're just going to be able to do it faster than I can. And I guess that's kind of where it comes, is like going, okay, what am I doing something here that there are other people who are kind of better qualified to do? Not necessarily that, I should give everything to everyone else, because there's always someone who's better qualified than you. But sometimes it's just like, how much time am I going to have to spend learning how to use this new software program, building up, doing practice. By the time I get to that, have I already burned through, I've estimated that this is going to take me 2 weeks. Is that a week and a half's worth of work there? And then I'm going to have an extra week that I'm not actually getting paid. And that's when you kind of go, okay, so it's actually costing me money to do it, even though you might not be getting paid during that period of time. It's kind of like, this is kind of above and beyond what I'm capable of doing or willing to learn. So there's been a few things like that. Some kind of graphic design projects. I did a big report document, which I enjoyed doing, but after doing it, I was like, what I should have done is kind of design directed this and hired someone else to do the the InDesign work because I'm just not. I don't use it every day. I'm just not fast enough. There's certain, like once you get into the flow of that sort of stuff, you can bash out the pages, but that kind of startup period was just like slow and painful.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting to now. Is like I can just, there's certain stuff that I'm just like, you'll be better off just getting someone else to do this. Like I'll help you. I'll give you some. I'll kind of consult for free if you want, but yeah, find someone who's kind of got the skills to. But then there's other stuff like where I'll kind of go, okay, this is a new thing. However, I've kind of always just wanted to learn how to do this.
Yeah. So
this is an opportunity to do it, and even if that kind of costs you a little money.
It's a different proposition.
It's a different proposition because it's kind of fun. It's when it stops being fun and you're not getting paid that it's like, oh God, this sucks.
Yeah. Self-awareness, like over time and trial and error is, I think, key for anyone. And you have to kind of try it to know.
Yeah, there's no way you could. Yeah, there's no way you could know this without the experience. Like coming out of university, you're never going to know what you're good at and what you're not. Yeah, because you're only doing a finite number of projects while you're at university. And after my daughter was born, I started working with my dad, and then I was like, this is getting a bit repetitive. I need to find something else to do. And so I went and talked to a consultant to kind of go, okay, what should I do next? And she basically said, and I assumed I'd go in and say, this is what I do, this is my degree, and she'd just go, oh yeah, you should try these jobs and these jobs. And she basically said to me, if anyone tells you that they know all the jobs, they're lying. And when you think about it, it's like, of course, like even within something like industrial design, there's 100 different varieties of industrial design. And so that kind of, what she got me to do was go out and talk to either people I knew who were doing interesting stuff, or talk to people I knew who knew other people who were doing interesting stuff, and just call them and say, can I sit down and talk to you? And I talked to like a guy who builds museum exhibits and an architect and because I didn't really know what I wanted to do next, and talked to designers and it was kind of a really interesting process of kind of going, now that I've had this kind of life experience and know kind of where my skills lie and what I find more difficult, it made it easier to kind of go, that was a great conversation, thanks for that. I'm not going to go down that path. But again, straight out from university, I still think it'll be a really useful process. You're just less likely to know whether it's going to fit you well or not. But that's the same with anything, though.
I resonate with that completely. I dropped out of engineering and I didn't know what to do, and I just happened to find myself in a place for the first time ever where I was talking to real people who are doing stuff like policemen, chefs, lawyers, doctors, those kind of people, because I was working in an amusement park. And up until that point, my idea of what a designer did or what a doctor did, it was just based off TV. It was based off like little bits and pieces of things that I've seen.
A caricature.
House. Exactly. A designer sit in a white space with a screen and like everything's minimal.
And they have black glasses.
Yeah, it's very clean.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurs are very, like this and all these kind of ideas. And when I met these real, because in high school you don't really meet that much people, and at uni either as well, I started to get much more of a kind of textured sense of what these careers mean, and it's like, oh, okay, like you're a policeman, but you go surfing every day. It's like a different, it's not just, police.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, for me, like even looking at like someone like Heston Blumenthal, I would say he is like right on the border of being a chef and being a designer. Like everything he does with his food is designed, like it's so precise and scientific, and there's lots of things like that where it's like you'd never think, like I never would have imagined that thinking about food could kind of cross over with design, but then you look at it sort of more and more, and there's these like restaurants. There's one in Shanghai called Ultraviolet, which is like a fully kind of experiential restaurant where the walls are LED panels, and there's one table within the restaurant, and the walls change as the different courses come out, and they change like the scent within the room, and the lighting changes, like everything changes, and it's like that's a designed experience. And so, and I kind of feel like people are more and more craving, I mean, it's obviously with the pandemic, it kind of makes the stuff more difficult now, unfortunately. But before that, and I'm sure after, it's going to be those kind of experiences that people want. And, a good experience is generally something that is considered and designed. And so, all these things have a design component to them. So, there's so many things that are designed. And then, like you've been doing with medical equipment is, again, someone has to come up with this stuff, like these crazy ways of performing heart surgery, using a thing that's threaded up through someone's leg. Like, it's medicine, but the equipment you use is all designed. So it's a kind of pervasive it's kind of hard to, it's everywhere, but not in a like, you don't hire a designer to do it, you just design while you're this other thing. So
absolutely. I'm thinking back to a lecture that I saw a while ago, and I can't even remember what the lecture was about, but it started off with this guy talking about, okay, if you drew a pie graph of everything that you could possibly know in the universe, right? How much of that pie graph do you know that you know?
Yeah, right.
And then it's like, well, probably like a fraction of 1%, right? And then he was like, okay, now you draw that in the pie graph. It's like a sliver. It's like, okay, now how much of this pie graph are things that you know that you don't know? So that brain surgery exists, but you know that you know nothing about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that gives you another chunk, right? But then by far the third category he pointed to, which was things that you don't know, which you don't even know that you don't know, is like the vast majority of things on that pie graph, right? But I think people in general usually overvalue the things that they know that they know. As like the full picture of the world, right?
Yeah, totally.
And they try to make decisions based off of just that. I've done these things before, so the things that I can do in the next future are probably these things. Whereas kind of the experience that you and I went through of kind of going outside of that sliver and actually talking to other people, experiencing other things, going traveling, it kind of forces you to encounter that huge other bit. And and once you see Heston Blumenthal, it's like, oh yeah, of course. Like,
totally.
What?
Totally. I'm kind of always fascinated by how some some people can't kind of see why other people do things differently to them. And it's like a real kind of, particularly cross-culturally, it's like one society does this thing in this way and another society does it in that way. And there's generally a reason that they do it in that way. You're just so used to the way that you do it, it's hard to imagine it done any other way. But I feel like there's kind of so much to be learned from that. Like I remember one of the more interesting ones I saw was, I'm sure you came across Max Fisher at design school, talking about her time in, where was she? Not Bangladesh, not Borneo, somewhere in Southeast Asia, and going to this town, and they had street food, and the food was served on banana leaves, and the drinks were served in like these clay cups. But what she kind of soon realized is that, you know, you drank your drink and then you just threw the cup onto the ground and it would break, but it was unfired clay, so it meant when the rain came, it just washed away. And then the banana leaves, everyone was just throwing onto the ground, which was like, okay, this is interesting. But then the elephants would come through the town, like the working elephants, and just eat the banana leaves that were lying on the ground. And it's like, that's such a, you know, in New Zealand, if you did the same thing, like had a clay cup and a banana leaf and you smashed it and threw it away, everyone would be like, why is this happening? Like, this is crazy. But you change the context and suddenly it makes total sense.
Yeah, wow.
And there's so many things like that I find really fascinating, and I'd love to kind of be able to see more of. And again, like the David Chang's TV series Ugly Delicious. I don't know if you've seen that. He's a Korean American chef, brought up in New York. He does this kind of show about all these sort of food that's ugly but delicious. But he goes over to China and he's talking to a Western woman who lives in Beijing, and she's like a massive kind of, she's a food critic and like passionate about Chinese food. And she takes him to this kind of very kind of traditionally Chinese restaurant, big round table, and she orders all these kind of types of food, and she's like, you're not going to like this, you're not going to be able to eat this. I really like it because I've learned to like it, and everyone in China likes it because they've grown up eating like this, but you don't have the experience to understand why it is the way it is. And it's things like kind of like tendons,
right,
which are kind of like apparently like a very chewy, slimy texture. And she's like, there's nothing in Western culture that we would eat that is anything even close to this, so you're just going to find this really bizarre and quite disgusting. And it's right, he can't eat it, but then when you sort of understand the context of, you know, they're using that as a traditional food they've used forever for these reasons, suddenly it makes more sense, and you stop thinking about it from the point of view of why would anyone eat this is disgusting, to go, oh, that's why they're eating it, because of these reasons, and this is how they cooked it, and this is the tradition. So I think there's there's so much fascinating stuff to learn in that sense.
For sure, it's been fascinating to actually see one of the modern food trends of bubble tea, like just sweep across, because it's like actually a strange concept, even for me, to have chewy things inside a drink.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people struggled with it, but over time.
Yeah. I find it weird when they hit the back of your throat. It's kind of like...
Yeah. All right, Brad, I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a piece of design for us, physical product or virtual, it could be a service, that you'd give a 9 out of 10 or more on, and why?
I was thinking about this really hard, and I was going, what do I own? I was like looking all around my house, going like, oh, I really like this knife, I really like this thing. But what I eventually came to is actually my watch, which my wife gave to me as a wedding present. And this is the Omega Speedmaster, which was designed in the late 50s. But kind of circling back to the start of the conversation, this is the watch that the astronauts wore to the moon.
Yeah.
And what I really like about this watch is that it's kind of, you can tell that it's a kind of a valuable watch because it's kind of got that aesthetic to it, but it isn't like one of those kind of Patek Philippe watches that look like they're kind of some sort of Swiss cuckoo clock or something, like with crazy stuff going on. Like there's, and it also on the other side doesn't look like some of the more kind of hardcore Rolex watches, which look like, you know, they're from the inside of a fighter jet. It's kind of got a nice balance, but like I can do really accurate timing and I can do all that sort of stuff, but it's also totally manual. It's stainless steel, which means that it's kind of relatively unbreakable. And you know, I like my technology. I try to keep my phone reasonably up to date. You know, I buy new computers whenever I can, but I've never been able to buy a smartwatch because I was like, I wouldn't wear this watch. So I figured like that's kind of for me, that's kind of a sign that something obviously works well, that, I'm willing to give away some of those, I'm sure they'd be convenient. I'm sure there's a lot of gimmicks on smartwatches as well, but it kind of works for my aesthetic. Like it's technical, but it's not flashy, but it's also got this kind of history of being tied to something that I really like in the space program, and kind of being able to sort of have a conversation around that. So yeah, Omega Speedmaster is my call for this conversation.
That's beautiful, man. And certainly it feels like one of those, I've noticed it before, and now hearing the story behind it, it feels like it's one of those objects that would for you increase in value over time, potentially that you potentially could have a life, beyond, many generations down the line, kind of thing.
And there's something nice about, like, this doesn't, like, there's no concept of inbuilt obsolescence with an object like this. Like,
no.
It's built to last forever, and there's something like, there's not much in my life that's like that anymore. Like, everything has so much to do with technology that there's so few things that you're like, oh yeah, I'll just have that forever. Like that's just going to be my thing that I have. Like I've got a few tools that I've got, like a nice set of chisels or a Est-wing hammer, that kind of stuff, which you're like, I'll probably never replace this. But in terms of like a really, like something quite valuable and kind of personal and something that has a considered design to it, this is kind of one of the few things that I actually own. So
and it's completely opposite of how, probably one of the most expensive things that most people own now is their smartphone, and the best that's ever going to look is right out of the box.
Yeah, totally.
And it's just downhill from there.
Yeah. Whereas this is like 60 plus years old and it's still kind of as valid as ever. So.
It's a treasure, man. Yeah. Brad, it's always great to talk to you.
Cheers. Nice being here.
Thank you so much. Let's have a part 2 at the end of the year or something.
Yeah, good idea.
See how the project's turned out.
Yeah. In the new space.
Yeah, in the new space. Cool, man.
All right.
I hope that was as dude, I really enjoyed this chat.
No, that was good. That was. It's always fun to kind of talk about that sort of stuff without